Okay. So as we gather in the sacred ground of sovereignty, committed to total energetic ownership of our divine nature in this space, working with those in higher realms of life, higher vibrations of worlds. We call in their information, their presence, to be here in secured space, knowing that we have energy moving through and to us greater than we've had in our entire lifetimes, or even maybe the lifetime of this planet. So we come also to know or hear or see what that might bring and mean to expanding this work we have committed to, which is seeing the future, anchoring it in this present, standing in the present and calling forth a future. More than wayshowers, we are the creators of. And if there is more we need to understand and know, we ask that also come to us here. So we gather, heart connected, in great love and reverence for our Mother Earth and the sun that brings us energy. Cocooned in the protocol of all that is the guardianship circle, and working with a collaborative beyond that which we even can totally comprehend, to move this entire end of our galactic energy wave to be restored and reconnected to our divine nature and home. So we thank all of you who are here, working with us, guiding us, be close, so that we can clearly participate most powerfully. Call in the violet rays, the beautiful, deep, rich purple of all that is the tag healing collective that helps keep and bringing in that pink opalescence from grace and of grace. And with that done, our space is prepared. And so it is. Okay, so because you're muted, you'll have to unmute yourself. And so presencing yourself in the circle, I think, is a good place to start. Just, there's a circle now. Here I am in it. Name where you are on the planet. If you want to put a word in, that's good too. And we can tag. Let's just tag. You tag someone and that somebody tags someone, even though there's few of us. Okay, let's start with Evie.
Oh, I'm in Anacortes, Washington. And the word that was with me last week and seems to still be with me is resolve. And I will pass it to Susan.
Hello, everyone. I am Susan. I am here in Byron, Illinois, in the beautiful Midwest today. The weather is absolutely gorgeous. I'd like to add, this phrase just caught me this morning, and it's just been hanging on. And I think as broadcasters, this message totally fits. Sending peace to the storm. I fell in love with that this morning. And that's all I have thought about, is sending peace to the storm as a broadcaster. Aho, Cinda.
I'm Cinda. I'm in Portland. And what do I want to bring into the group? What do I want to bring into the group? Peace. I just bringing peace to the storm. Well, you already said that. How about a calmness, calm to the storm? Peace and calm. Oh. Sharon.
Okay, I'm Sharon Raji Maynard on Woodbury Island, Washington State, and I'm going to bring anchored presence to the circle. So I mentioned that, we had this meeting on Friday morning, which is women who came together the previous Friday that were really, they passionate in some way about what was going on with the protests and Black Lives Matters, and then they met again Friday morning, and kind of like what's missing. I kind of went over all the different things that are going on just in our community and what's missing. So one of the pieces Evie is going to help take on. So, and it's another call, of course, because that's what we're doing, not doing too many picnics. So Evie, want to tell them a bit about that?
So with the range of groups that we have going on, we are very focused on our specific outcomes, both in terms of understanding what is and looking toward what can be. But it felt like in those past two Friday calls, not only was there a passion and commitment toward anti-racism, but not all of our virtual sisters, and certainly not all those that are not, present on calls, feel the same kind of connection and support that some of us have. I'm very grateful that I do have that in a number of different arenas. But hearing that that seems to be one thing that has dropped off from the calls, and our check-ins are quite quick and brief. I had suggested that we offer the option for our participants to spend a little time learning more from each other. I mean, we are such multidimensional, complex, gifted people. I was going to say healers, and I've got some work to do around that term, but having the space to provide that support, I think, can further center us as we do the existing work in the other calls. And Sharon, add to that, you had some other things that arose for you too around it.
I think that's probably what you said. It was more like to get together and just share who you are and what you are, what you're about, with not an agenda of moving anything forward. And it might be that there'd be small circles here and there, and small numbers to make it a little bit easier. So that's what the intention of this next call is, just for anybody really in the community of any kind or outside the community that just feels like they want to come and talk and hear and listen in a circle of other women that are going through this in some fashion, and not to create any project.
And be witnessed, I think.
Yeah.
To be witnessed. And I am still learning and having to reckon with the true depth of listening. And listening, I still find myself fixing other people, even virtually, by making recommendations when that's not true presence for other folks. And we kind of do that unconsciously. and because we want to be of help. But that's based on a set of assumptions and judgments. And I think to be truly present for each other, it's learning how to use inquiry in a way that opens somebody up and helps validate them wherever they're at. Hope.
Yeah. So what date is, what's the day of the week? Do you have the logistics down?
It's a Friday, and so I think that's the 19th.
And we're going to do what is it, 3 o'clock one, right?
3 o'clock.
3 p.m. Yeah. So that's been added. There was another circle that another group wanted to do, maybe a book study around the racial issue, maybe in relationship to how in this, how we would see it on this game board. I just finished a class, and somebody said she's doing some study in a community to learn about Black experience, but it's really hard for her because it almost doesn't matter what she says as a white woman. She has this label that she's not okay, and anything she said, it's this, and she says that, then it's that, and she's just finding it very difficult. And a Black woman on the call said, no, that's what they're saying about the Black experience is not going to get them free of the Black experience, so that's not a place I would even play. And she explained why, and why it's important to have various ways of presenting the material, and so that's another circle that's going to be starting. So I guess one of the things we can hold for the future, because I say this community because it does seem to be a community that's got a lot of different circles in the community, a lot of reaches outside the community, but it's really seems to just be, it's not even blossoming, it's almost like exploding. So, it feels so much to me so quickly. Maybe part of our future, maybe part of what I will look into the future and say, how can I make it stable, and keep it moving forward in a stable way. So, okay, and then let's go around. Is there anything else, any of the rest of you'd want to say before we do our future work? Okay. Here's a question I think I'm going to put out there. We have about, I would guess, 30 to 40 circles throughout the world. We haven't really done anything to, anything major to get more circles. And do we need to? And if so, what would be some ideas to garner interest that somebody might say, oh, that would be similar way I'd like to play. I mean, do you have any sense of that, since they're just beyond me and Susan, because Susan's my co-pilot here.
With the outcome of what's your desired outcome? What's our desired outcome of expanding circles?
When I first created the concept, I thought my thing was I'd like to have at least one circle in every state and at least one in every country eventually, and that's the extent of it. Susan and I have talked about it. We've certainly done some. I think there's been some good work done by the circles just as they are, and maybe this is or is not the time, but maybe it is the time to put out another invitation.
I'd like to say that I have very little contact other than my friends from Moscow over in Russia. And what I've learned from them is what we take for granted in understanding circle principles and how they work is perhaps in some areas not evolved. And so I think it has to be scaffolded up to where women are in their trust, in their understanding of what circles can do, So if I were to see expansion, that's where I probably would want to put some attention to. How,
What about a marketing campaign of sorts? Just like an information campaign about those very things, about, you know, what a group is about and what to expect as you would come into one. And, you know, putting those topics out there. Are you interested in these? You know, this is what our circles are about. Giving people, you know, getting it, you know, into the broader world, into that area with a marketing campaign, assuring that it's a safe place. This is the progress that we've made. These are the things that we've experienced. You know, explaining the rules kind of thing. This is how we build a foundation of trust and expand in sovereignty, and, you know, see how this can change your inner world without compromising, without you feeling you have to heal or do something for someone else. That this is solely something for your heart, for yourself, for your self-growth. And put those topics out there. I mean, they're fascinating topics. I mean, anyone who has even dabbled in metaphysics, I believe, would be fascinated by all the amazing work that these circles have done and are doing and can do. You know, so I think younger people would be hungry for that connection and that understanding and learning. Oh.
Well, I think considering that we really started the Crystal Broadcasters with the intention of collapsing the timelines from the time travelers, that we should start there, because that group, I mean, I know they're all aware of it, but just a reminder of the time travelers that, you know, here is what we are doing in time travel, and then here is how we're ensuring that those, you know, that those, you know, that we are collapsing time so it can speed up the work that we're doing in the time travel. And if you want to help facilitate that, come into the Crystal Broadcasters and bring a friend. You know, I think it's the time travel is one thing, but the Crystal Broadcasting is, I mean, because you're working with physical stuff, right? I mean, you're holding those crystals, you're working with a glyph, you're charging those crystals, you're putting them on the earth, you're creating a grid, right? I mean, it's so beautiful that and powerful what the Crystal Broadcasters do. I mean, so maybe if we do a push with the time travelers and encourage them to bring a friend into the Crystal Broadcasters, and we can expand out that way. Because I know that for me, when Crystal Broadcasters very first started, I knew instantly all these people that I would want, and they were all my neighbors. You know, it was like, so right, I'm covered. I got the cul-de-sac covered. So let me reach over to Idaho, and let me reach into California, and let me reach, you know, into Washington. Let me at least look for other people that aren't in my backyard. And those people, not all those people did I invite into the time traveling, you know, so there isn't necessarily a complete overlap. I think we could tap into all the other groups and help them encourage. If not you, invite a friend too. I mean, because we have this gigantic resource, right, of women. I mean, if not you, if you don't want to, perhaps you know someone who would want to. We're looking specifically for these locations, maybe even, you know.
But what's interesting about the feedback is this for me, is that when I started the Crystal Broadcasting as a project, I put out a notice on Facebook and asking women who love stones and crystals, and would they be interested in, you know, using them as part of whatever. And my intention was never that they would be on calls. wasn't that we would have calls.
Ah,
We've only had calls. Began having calls what, February or March of this year? But we've been doing broadcasting for a year before that. But it was because what the world was going through that I said, instead of doing, we started with one call a month for crystal broadcasters, time travelers, and guardian circles all together. And that was okay. But when the world started to shift like it did, then I said, oh my gosh, those who can or want to, we really need to be weekly. So we've only been doing this weekly as an online, for a few months. So so what I set in place wasn't at all a call. So maybe, taking your information and think, oh, okay, where is it at this point that it ought to be? That's been valuable. And I'm not sure what that's going to come up to be, but I think it's at his space. I said, we know we have more energy coming in, so show us what we need to shift and adjust, so we may get more of that. That's definitely an invitation for an adjustment. So thank you for that.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. What about a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
If prefacing, if you're like you started out, if you're interested in crystals and working with crystals and putting a podcast out on YouTube that you highlight crystals. I mean, all the crystal people are going to check on that podcast and find out how you could work differently with crystals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, altars, building altars.
Altars, yep. Just put it out there on YouTube and start getting those people to click on that link. I love crystals, so what else can I work with? What is there something? Everybody wants something new, something different, and this most definitely is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. Let that idea be in our circle. Okay.
Well, and I think I'm going to interrupt one more time before you start sharing. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. But I'm just sitting here thinking, because you brought up a really, really good point, and that is that you didn't necessarily start this to have meetings. I mean, it was just to have the crystals, and here's the recommendations, here's how you do it, here's the grid you build around it, here's the glyph that you put under it.
Yep.
And then every month, and so you send it out at the beginning of every month. And so even though there's 4 of us on this call, there's how many of us that are still participating in this grid, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
But based upon the image that I saw, in the time traveling, and the ones that continually show themselves are those pillars, right? And those energy. And I keep seeing people that are shooting energy out of the top of their head as they're reaching God consciousness, and they're tapping in and creating a new grid that is separate from the main grid. And that new grid is going to be shifting in a different direction on the axis than the main grid, which will sever and separate from, and maybe this is the rising of the 5D, but I think that this crystal broadcasting group that we're participating in is part of that connection to this new grid, which is anchoring that new grid in. So when it begins to shift separate from the old grid, we are really raising the vibration. I mean, if you guys feel that what I saw was real, but to me it's real. I see it every night now that I close my eyes. But I think the work that we do here is so significantly different than what we do in any of the other groups. I mean,
oh yeah, it's very different. What I'm committed to is that we're not disconnecting, we're lifting.
mm-hmm.
We're lifting. So whoever's down here have been playing a role that's heavy. They've been playing that role of the heaviness of the patterns, where we have had the opportunity or the privilege of being free of that density so we could see it, not so we could leave them behind. But as we lift, everything lifts, except guess who gets to stay behind? Dominators.
Oh, absolutely. It is this whole separate internal, I mean, the way that I see it is just, no, I don't see anyone getting left behind as much as I just see a new grid being created by the higher frequencies.
Lifting us all. Okay, so what we're going to do is do a very easy, simple, guided quieting meditation visualization, bringing your team in so that you can then be with them and in whatever manner they take you. And normally what we would say is, show us the future that wants to be anchored here. That would be the normal. And see it, feel it, taste it, whatever, so that you can bring it back in a way that's very physically impactful too, which means senses, whatever code's there, whatever symbol you get there. And then when you're complete with that, then bring it back to anchor it here. And you can anchor it with a reality shift, writing it down, speaking it to us. And then when everyone's back, then we will, give whatever it is we've gotten, program our crystals, etc. So I'm going to set it for like 10 minutes. If it's not enough, I'll extend it. But if it's shorter, I'll be watching. But at 10 minutes or so. Okay. So in this place of being together, rooted into the earth, and yet so connected to our star families, our divine families, filled with the creative, unlimited energy for our use here on the planet. We are fueled, we are equipped. We invite those teams that travel with us and are ready to work with us in this regard are here. So get a sense of their presence with you. All that we do, wherever we travel, is within a secured channel space of the sacred ground of sovereignty. We have beings with us of integrity, of wisdom, of insight and joy. We don't travel alone. We are the surrogate in this greater web of life. Certainly the crystal broadcasters and even beyond. So as you're ready, let yourself be drawn and lifted up out of the body, above your home and trees. Traveling with your team, they'll guide you from this point on. When you have completed and gathered all that you are to do, we will meet you back here in the circle within our physical body space. Travel well.
With red flowers. And the concept that came to me was restoration from trauma in the future. And what I envisioned was community-based, free centers of healing and wholeness. And new techniques and old techniques were being used. There'd be a place where you could step in and your body would suddenly get restored. And you've heard of the concept of oxygen bars. So there would be these places where you can just recharge. If we can do it for our cars, we can do it for the human being.
Yeah.
So then I said, yes, charging stations. And they are as common as, anything that serves the material world. And it's community-based. It's not sponsored by government or by the formalized system. So, and maybe that just reflects what I need, but that's what came to me. Oh. I'll pass it to Cinda.
Susan, weren't you supposed to go next, or? Okay,
I mixed it up.
you mixed us up. Okay.
Yeah.
You mixed us up. Okay, that's okay, no problem. So what was really interesting is I didn't go anywhere, and I was sitting there going, my God, did I just fall asleep? You know, I mean, seriously, I was just like, almost like hit over the head unconscious, but conscious. It's very weird. And I said, well, I better get busy. And then I heard, you are. What do you mean? And I went, oh, okay, show me. So it was not too far in the near future that all of us crystal broadcasters were meeting, and there was many of us on the screen, and we were all holding our 3 crystals with the glyphs for whatever month it was. And we were being guided, since we couldn't be everywhere in the world yet, but it was imperative that the time, that time was of the essence, that we were traveling together in meditation to all the sacred sites around the globe. So we were all sitting there, there's many of us on the screen, but we're all sitting there with the 3 crystals and the glyphs. And we were being transported through guidance together, all of us, so however many of us there were. And we were like, for example, Stonehenge, or the pyramids, or the Mayan temples, or wherever all the sacred sites were. And we were traveling there etherically, and we were taking our crystals and we were surrounding all the sacred sites with them energetically, visualizing, putting the sites there with the glyphs, with them already charged to the glyphs. And, so we would go and we'd spend a couple minutes around Stonehenge, and we would hit all of the, the British Isles, all of the sacred sites, depositing and activating. And then we would go and we would do the continent of Africa, and then we would do the Americas, and then we would do, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Egypt, I mean, you name it. We just traveled everywhere, but as a group together, surrounding all the sacred sites with our crystals, all charged with the same glyph. And when we did that, when we would back up and we'd be done, we would see those sacred sites being activated and attaching to the grid to help speed up the raising of the vibration, to collapse those timelines faster and faster. And so the symbol that I came back with was, there's those beautiful selenite, cute little towers, it's like a wand, but then they have the top carved off in a curve. I've got 3 of them. I don't have them with me, but they're just these little towers. So that's what everyone was putting, is these little selenite towers that are just about that big. And then I also saw your fire, Susan, your fire agate citrine circle you created. Oh my God. And then I also saw just 3 selenite wands. You know how you kind of build a fire with wood? And so basically selenite, fire agate, and carnelian were sort of the 3 predominant stones, but they were all signifying a tower of energy. Okay. Susan.
That's so amazing, because you're just I love the way they all interweave, and how they're all connected. So this working with this process of peace to the storm, right? And as soon as Sharon said codes, I started writing codes again in light language, like on my little whiteboard. I'm like, okay, so I'm bringing in these codes, peace to the storm, energetically, crystalline. So it's a different form of light language. They said it's a crystalline matrix light language that this coding is. And so all of a sudden, this beautiful stargate, the Pleiadians came through, and this beautiful stargate opened, and the energy just emanated and just came out in this gorgeous unraveling. And standing in it I started to tear up. My heart, I was just overwhelmed. The peace and the love that came through the Stargate. And I'm like, well, is it supposed to surround the world, or what's this energy for? And then all of a sudden, they use the words crystal and peace poles. So all of a sudden, all over the world, there's these towers of crystalline energy with crystals, and they called them crystalline peace poles, and they were planting them all over the world. And when you were talking about the selenite towers, I'm like, that's the broadcaster that's emitting. But they had these beautiful stones on these crystalline peace poles, and I was just like in awe. I'm like, I want to go put one out in my backyard. You know, I want to go create one and put this peace pole and let it broadcast out this sense of peace to the storm. So here's my light language coding. So whatever that means or whatever that's about, I have no clue. They didn't tell me. I asked. They were like, don't need to know. So I just kept scripting, but they got me with the peace pole. But this Stargate, this energy, it was so much of grace mixed into it. Yet there was this presence of the fractal, of all you needed to do was grab a star from it in these rays that were coming down, and just put that star to your heart, that you would anchor in that peace to the storm. Aho.
Okay, so where I was immediately taken was like I called it a tunnel, but it wasn't really a tunnel. It wasn't really a channel, but it was more like a pathway. But it was totally, and it was out in nature, and it was totally arched over with crystals that were live, living crystals. So this was a living crystal pathway, and it took me down into this world. This is the world of crystal beings. So not only were there, they didn't really have a physical form, maybe more a fairy form, and these beings were growing crystals like plants, and they said, we're growing crystals like plants. There's not an end to them. There's never going to be an end to them, just like plants. They were just growing and growing. And they said, and these crystals want to be in a world where they're free to be what they choose to be. And what was brought to my attention is how we as human beings have a tendency to name everything and label it, and they want just to be free to be who they are and to begin speaking that language to us, so that the crystals want to not receive information from us. They want us to receive information from them, to begin to nurture that process of listening to the crystals within this crystal broadcasting group, even to start saying, start listening to your crystals. What are they telling you? What's the directions they're telling you? What is that? What part of that is for the group? What part of it is for yourself? So that they become an active part in what is growing here. And that's what I got. And the symbol I got was a little gold bell. So that's what I keep having. Aren't we glad we recorded this? It really, you can't, we witness it. This is, like the witness, listening and deep, so you can witness it. But then to be able to taste it again is also really nice. So just take your crystals. And you may want to ask them, first of all, what they have to say to you. And are these the ones that do they want to be programmed, or do they want to tell you what they want within them? So just spend a moment with your crystals. we're just spending a moment with our crystal, Cinda, to see what our crystal wants to say to us. Okay. And working with the crystal as your partner, what message it has for you to hold, what message it wants to broadcast itself. Speak that as the one in the physical body who has that mission and assignment to anchor that and activate it here on the planet. Okay, we close. If is there anything that your crystal wants you to share with this group before we close? Let's let that opportunity be there. Okay. Thank you very much for being here, for being you. Yeah,
My crystal kept saying, breathe, breathe. You know, I didn't know when we were bringing a word in, I didn't know what to do. And I kept hearing peace, but then Susan was already representing peace. So I said calmness, but really what was screaming in my ear was freedom. And so when you said that your crystal really wanted, you know, to be free, I'm like,
there it was.
there it was. It was presented anyway.
Yeah, it was. Oh, okay. So let's all breathe.
Breathe.
And just
here's my. Here's the.
Oh, okay, those tower things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very beautiful. What are they called?
I'm sorry. They're selenite, but they've been, you know, carved on top in a spiral to take the energy up. I just love them.
Fabulous.
So I keep interrupting. I apologize.
Okay. So let's just, what we're going to do is just take and move that energy from this circle, let it build and fill us and move with the crystal's voices and send that out in any way to any place, person that you feel is calling for it, so that we spread this to lift the world. In doing so, the circle is complete. So it is.
So it is.
Okay. Until we meet wherever we meet next time. Lots of love, you lot, ladies. Such
Thank you. So beautiful.
friends.
Thank you.
Bye, loves.
Bye.